Right now, Iran is under more internal pressure than it has been in years. Protests across major cities, an economy under heavy strain, security forces stretched thin, and growing cracks inside the political elite. From the outside, it looks like a system that's starting to fracture. So a lot of people are asking the same question. If the regime is this vulnerable, why is the United States still waiting? Why isn't Washington moving faster while the pressure is already high? To understand that, you have to look at how governments think about collapse. Because from a strategic point of view, a regime under pressure can break in two very different ways. One path is internal collapse. Security forces stop obeying orders. Elites start defecting. Government institutions slowly stop functioning. And eventually, the system caves in on itself. That's the kind of collapse that gives people a real chance to rebuild. But there's another path. If an outside enemy enters the picture, everything changes. Suddenly, the story is no longer people versus regime. It becomes country versus foreign threat. And when that happens, even deeply unpopular governments often survive longer. Why? Because fear unites people faster than anger does. Security forces that were questioning orders now close ranks. Political rivals inside the system stop fighting each other. And the regime gets to justify emergency laws, mass arrests, and total communication shutdowns as national defense. So, from Washington's perspective, the danger is that outside pressure could actually rescue the regime from internal collapse by giving it a bigger enemy to fight. It's like a cracked dam. If the pressure comes from inside, the cracks keep spreading. But if you hit the outside of the dam, the people inside may rush to reinforce it instead of letting it break. That's the calculation U.S. planners are constantly making. Then there's the regional picture. Iran is not isolated. It has armed allies and proxy forces across the Middle East. Any serious confrontation risks activating Hezbollah in Lebanon, militias in Iraq, and attacks on shipping in the Red Sea. At that point, the world isn't focused on Iranian protesters anymore. It's focused on missiles, oil prices, and regional war. And history shows that when wars start, revolutions usually disappear from the headlines and from international priorities. There's another issue that shapes U.S. hesitation. What happens the day after? Now, some people will say there actually is a transitional figure. Crown Prince Reza Pahlavi has openly positioned himself as a temporary national leader, promising a transition period, followed by a referendum where the Iranians choose their own system, whether that's a republic, a monarchy, or something in between. That matters. Because having a recognizable national figure with a public transition plan does reduce the risk of total political vacuum. It gives foreign governments someone they can recognize, someone they can negotiate with, and someone who can coordinate international support during a transition. But from Washington's point of view, the question isn't only political leadership, it's security control. Who controls the armed forces? Who controls the intelligence services? Who controls the weapons, especially if parts of the IRGC splinter? Even with a transitional figure, foreign governments worry that collapse could still mean competing armed groups before civilian authority fully stabilizes. So, while the existence of an organized transition plan changes the conversation, and it absolutely does, it doesn't completely remove the fear of short-term instability after regime collapse. So, foreign governments don't just ask, can this regime fall? They also ask, what replaces it? And how violent does that process become? And if they can't answer that with confidence, they become very cautious about doing anything that might accelerate collapse before internal power structures fully fracture. That's why the pressure you see right now is quieter and slower. Financial isolation, diplomatic isolation, information pressure, legal pressure on regime networks abroad. Fear, not because the regime deserves patience, but because leaders fear that the wrong kind of pressure at the wrong moment could shift an internal revolt into an external war. Now, here's the part that frustrates a lot of people. Windows of opportunity don't stay open forever. When regimes survive major uprisings, they usually come back more brutal, more paranoid, and more technologically repressive. They purge disloyal officers, they rebuild surveillance systems, they restructure security forces, meaning future resistance becomes even harder. So yes, timing absolutely matters. And the presence of an organized opposition and transition plan is exactly what makes this moment different from past protests. But, from Washington's point of view, the fear is that acting too aggressively, too visibly, could still push the system into a violent regional confrontation before internal collapse fully takes hold. So when people ask why the US is still waiting, even as Iran looks like it's cracking, it's not because the regime isn't dangerous. It's not because the people don't deserve freedom. It's because US leaders are trying, right or wrong, to avoid turning a revolution into a war. And that is the dilemma shaping US decisions right now. Thanks for watching Echoes of Iran.